Hello, everybody. My name's Bruce Montgomery, and I'm with The Road to Retail. This is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hello, everybody.
So here on our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer tips, insights, ideas, and examples for how small, emerging, and challenger CPG, consumer packaged goods brands, can build their business. Everything from determining if you're ready to grow, where to start, how to prove it online, how to go about securing distribution at a national retailer, driving your business through to the end consumer, and how to go about finding an investor if you're ready for that and that's important to you. The bottom line is Tracy and I have been doing this for a long time. We've made a lot of mistakes. We've done a couple of good things, and we would love to try to help you smooth out your journey to success at retail. Tracy?
Yeah, like Bruce said, we've been doing this a long time, and a long time is 30 plus years, all in commercial operations. And so what we mean by commercial operations is sales, marketing, trade marketing, acquisitions, divestitures, product development, managing distributors, managing brokers, working with marketing agencies. So we've done a lot of good things, like Bruce said, some things we've made some mistakes, and we want to share that with our small, emerging, and challenger brand audience. Also, on our episodes from time to time, we invite friends and colleagues and founders to be guests on our podcast. And today we've got a great guest I think that you guys are really going to enjoy. So Bruce, tell us who we have with us today.
Thanks, Tracy. So today we have RJ Talyor, who is the founder and CEO of an emerging company called Backstroke. So instead of this being an interview with a CPG brand founder selling the latest and greatest this or that, RJ's here to tell you how he and his firm can help you as founders and owners of small, emerging challenger brands do more business. So RJ, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. And why don't you take a minute or so to tell us a little bit about your background and how you came up with Backstroke and got here today.
Sure. Thanks so much to both of you for having me on. I'm thrilled to be here. And my background is in digital marketing. And I graduated from college with an English degree and the hope that I could be an entrepreneur one day, and somehow ended up at a tech company where I didn't probably have the skills that were needed at all. But I worked there for 10 years and then ended up figuring out how to do digital marketing with tech undertones, started a company that I sold to Shutterstock, and then really got into all this artificial intelligence, machine learning stuff. And then this company, which is called Backstroke, you can check it out at backstroke.com, blends all of my experience truly like as an English major with my experience in the email marketing world at ExactTarget, with my previous experience in AI to help digital marketers at specifically retail brands to get more out of their investment in messaging channels like email, SMS, push, and anywhere else where you're writing copy. So what Backstroke does, if it's okay to quick intro, is it uses the latest in all of the generative stuff. I'm sure everybody on this podcast has heard the term ChatGPT. Well, you can fine tune those models to speak just like your retail brand would speak. And a lot of small and emerging and challenger brands are trying to figure out ways to more efficiently apply their marketing spend. And that's what Backstroke does, because we've fine-tuned and taught these models how to write content that can drive more sales from email, more sales from SMS, and more sales from push messaging and other marketing channels. So that's a quick history as well of what we do today, gives you maybe an overview of why I'm here.
No, that's great. And thanks again for coming on. Tracy?
Absolutely. So just fascinating. So tell us a little bit, our audience, we've got small, emerging, challenger brands, founders on here. Tell us a little bit about the backstory of how you came up with this idea, a little bit, maybe did you do some research? What made you identify the gap in the market that said, hey, this is a great idea? And what was the I guess the background of what made you just say, I'm going for it?
Yeah. Well, when I graduated from college, my parents were like, "What are you going to do now? We just helped you pay for this expensive education." And I said, "Well, I'm either going to be an English professor or an entrepreneur." And I wanted to own a restaurant. That was my that was my return. And my parents were kind of grimaced at both, thinking, "Man, this guy has just spent all this money on college, and now he's going to end up either being a professor or slinging sandwiches or something." So but I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I've had a good fortune of being an entrepreneur a few times. And so I like starting businesses and growing them in the beginning. But through my career, I've worked with a lot of small and emerging brands, and there's nothing more fun than those brands that you talked to like 3 years ago that you see just blow up, you know? And but in early days, and even in the kind of those emerging days, brands are trying to figure out, what do we spend our time on and what do we spend our money on. A lot
Mhm.
of times I'll talk to a CEO who is also the CMO of the brand, and they're, not only doing all of the strategic thinking, but also doing all the marketing. And then over time, they might hire a marketing agency or a marketing person, and then that team grows to two or three. And then they'll grow even further. And what we end up with is a lot of marketing bloat, where we have like a team of marketers, and we've got really like we've got a copywriter and a digital marketer, and you end up thinking, man, is this really driving the revenue that I want to from my brand? So I know that that's just a problem. How do you keep expenses down, especially in today's environment? How do you do more with less?
So RJ, can you tell the audience how your email marketing software and approach can help them build and drive their sales and revenue? Because you just said a couple of the magic words that we hear all the time. And frankly, whether you're at Procter and Gamble or at Bruce and Tracy's excellent company, time and money are always precious, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I also think it could be helpful if you could, touch on a little bit about how your service kind of works. Because to be candid, a lot of people hear technology and they think super expensive, highly complicated. I'm going to need like 10 people to oversee this, and then they just don't even call you back because they're seeing ghosts that don't exist.
Yeah, yeah. So, first off, about 2 years ago, I started signing up for every retail brand's email marketing programs and also their SMS programs. And so now we have over 10,000 different marketing programs, campaigns, like all the emails they sent, all the text messages they sent for the last 2.5 years. The second thing we did is we started collecting consumer preferences. So going out and asking a panel of US consumers, what types of messages do you typically respond to? When it has all caps, do you respond more frequently than when it doesn't have all caps? Do you like emojis? Do you like percentages off? Do you like it when there's a heavy fear or FOMO based message versus a joyful message? So emotion as well as syntax components. And if you combine those two together and train using machine learning models, then the machine will actually know how to best market a product. So let's say, Bruce, you've got a product X that's coming out, and you're the expert in product X, in the supply chain and in the merchandising of it and the negotiation of how do you get it on store shelves. But how do you actually get people to know about it, and how do you get people to buy again? Well, you're not the expert in digital marketing, but you can use a machine learning model like Backstroke that knows exactly when you say, like, we're targeting women between the ages of 35 and 45 who live on the East Coast. Backstroke knows what women who are 35 to 45 on the East Coast, what types of messages they like to see. And so we'll generate the subject line content, the pre-header content, the email, as well as a text message that's most likely to convert them. And it works. So rather than you having to create and write all the content, we can generate that content using machine learning models. So that's how it works.
Yeah, so that's interesting that's when you gave the example of 35 to 45-year-old women on the East Coast, because one of the other things I was curious about was how do you find the right people? Because
Yeah.
I think I received maybe even more messages than you, and you signed up for them, but I'll get things that I don't even know why I'm getting. I
Yeah.
gave Tracy an example before this show. I bought one of my daughters a suitcase. I will not name the firm I got it from, I get like 4 messages a day. I'll never buy another suitcase from them. I wish I knew their CEO's email because I would just forward every single one to him or her.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's the reason why they're sending you so many emails is because it's really cheap. I mean, fractions of a penny to send you that message. And in the off chance that you might buy 1, 2 years or 3 years in the future, it will be a crazy return on investment for those emails. So that's why they're sending them to you. And maybe if there were more attractive frequency of messaging, for example. So Bruce, maybe you shouldn't get 4 emails a day or 4 emails a week, but instead, if a machine learning model were to say, hey, send them a message once a month or once a quarter just to check in, like maybe some tips and tricks on how to keep the wheels greased and how to clean it out or air freshener or those types of things. That might be more valuable to build more trust with the brand versus just heavy spamming you. So frequency is what you're talking about, and that might be a different angle that Backstroke could help with as well.
So one other thing before we kick it back to Tracy, RJ. Again, having been in charge of a lot of brands like Tracy, one of the things I'm always worried about is making sure that my budgets don't get away from me. How do you guys put governors or caps so that Bruce and Tracy's excellent brand, if we say, hey, we're going to spend 15,000 with you for this month and see how it goes, how do you make sure that by the time you or your machine hits the button, it hasn't run up to 23,000?
Yeah, so we everything's on a subscription basis. So the subscription's a flat subscription based on the size of your email list. So if you have 100,000 people on your list, you can budget for the certain amount to hit you every month, and no surprises in the pricing. And well, a lot of what brands do is they'll want to make sure that the subscription price pays back X return. So as a part of getting started with a customer, we typically do a small pilot to validate that the product works for them, as well as then create that ROI calculator so that for every dollar you're spending on Backstroke, you have a number in mind so that the margins work out and everything's good to go. And so that flat fee doesn't change over time.
All right, so that's good news. And the takeaway is that there are caps and governors so people can have high degrees of confidence that their budget won't get away from them.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Tracy?
Yeah, and just to clarify, so you're using the brand's email list then?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Absolutely. And what's cool about software is and stop me if I get too down software land, but it used to be that software looked like a dot matrix printer or like the DOS screens, and you'd have to know all these commands and stuff in order to run it. But more and more, what in the software land we call the consumerization of B2B software. So everybody's familiar with apps and software that you can buy, everything from a flight to manage your bank account. And Apple has really set the standard in a lot of ways that then means that your software that you use for work also needs to be simple, easy, intuitive. And so all the software that is being built now keeps that in mind. So our Backstroke is built in the same way. How do we make it so that you're not spending all your time trying to figure out how to build software, but instead approving or reviewing things that the software presents to you? So you don't have to be a software expert in order to use Backstroke. You just have to be comfortable with a computer and you should be good to go.
So a quick follow-up question to Tracy's point, RJ. If we came to you with a high-end skincare product, but we didn't have an email list, can you guys still help us or no?
Probably not. No. Well, if you don't have an email list, we would figure out whether it would be worth you to have an email list, or if you have a text list, we'd probably want to figure that out as well. But if you didn't have either of those, we wouldn't be the right solution.
Okay.
But if you had an email list, or you wanted to increase brand presence, or you're maybe going to experiment with some D2C, that's when we can help you.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So back to your point, so we don't need to know how to write code to use your software.
No, not at all. The opposite. I mean, this software was built by me. I'm an English major, so I like to remind people that we have smart developers, data scientists, PhDs, et cetera, that are building it, but it has to be built in a way that doesn't take all of our time, but instead, how can we just put our strategy into software that helps us. And, you know, with all of this artificial intelligence capability, there's even more work that's able to be done on behalf of a normal customer. So a brand manager or a brand expert can be an expert in the brand, not an expert in the software.
Right.
That's what, you know, their brains need to be, is what does our brand represent? How do we go to market? How do we, you know, optimize these channels, et cetera? And then the software just executes that in a way that feels very seamless.
Awesome. So I have a question. So tell us how your software works to Bruce's example where he's getting, you know, 4 emails a day from people. How does your software work to keep that from happening so that you're not over communicating or inundating, you know, a customer?
Yeah, so yeah, because we know the consumer preferences. So we've gone out and done these surveys out to US consumers and asked them all sorts of questions, like how frequently do you like messaging? How often do you check your emails? And our software auto can creates the content that respects those boundaries. And, you know, the primary thing that every brand needs to think about is permission. And for example, like did they opt in to get my emails? That's a critical thing. If they didn't opt in, you can't send the messaging. The Can Spam Act actually prevents you from doing that, and you can open yourself up to liability or risk. But if they did opt in, so maybe Bruce, when you bought your suitcase, maybe you did inadvertently opt in, then the question is, how do you not abuse the trust that you have there? And sending somebody emails 4 times a day, or, you know, it's overwhelming.
Yes.
And there are reasons for, like in a skincare brand, maybe there would be reasons like to send emails 3 a day, because maybe there's a daily regimen that I've opted into that I need a reminder to note how to apply the skincare product in the morning, and then the midday, and then in the evening, or something like that. But you can't send those every single day. And what happens is people unsubscribe or delete those messages. And then Google, Yahoo, all the different messaging platforms watch the level of unsubscribes, and they'll start blocking the messages if you have enough complaints or deletes or non-opens. So it's not in anybody's best interest to create a spam machine, even though in the short term they make more money because you're seeing the return on it. In the long term, you'll end up getting really in the bad graces of the platform. So to answer your question, we will recommend frequency caps and frequency of messaging based on the vertical and the product that you sell. You can, as a human, override those if you're interested in that, but that is not a recommendation, and you will see short-term success and long-term failure if you just.
I have a quick question, Bruce. So how does a consumer opt in? I'm interested because, like, when I go to retailers and things like that, I know they're collecting my data because I'm in this space for a living. So the first thing they say is, "Oh, can we get your email address or your phone number?" Yeah. But how do consumers opt in for a brand? I'm interested.
Sure. Yeah. So when you go, if you're going to a retailer, like a big box retailer or a big retailer, you would opt in specifically for that retailer.
Right.
There may be a second opt-in box that says, I can share this data with our partners. And that is a pretty vague opt-in to all sorts of stuff. What would more likely happen is if you're going to that skincare brand's website, and you go to the skincare brand's website, and then there's a pop-up that says, would you like to sign up for our beauty tips? And then you say yes. And then what was a best practice is that then you get a second screen that says, how often would you like to get these messages? Daily, weekly, quarterly, every once in a while, that type of stuff. So that's where you would actually opt into the brand's messages versus maybe at the retailer level where you have a blanket opt-in that would just end up in spam.
Right. So are you opting in because I know when I go to websites, it pops up and asks me, oh, do you want a 10% discount or a 15%? Yes. Is that also opting in?
Yes. Yeah. Normally it'll say, do you want 10% off by signing up for our email list? And they make it conditional.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bruce.
So RJ, I want to go down a little further there because I think this is really interesting. So when a company or a brand wants to build an email list, in your experience, do you think it is a higher quality get of that email if you don't ask that question until they've actually purchased something? Or is is a better hook to offer, like a promo to try to incent them to give you, because Tracy's example is good. It's like, hey, 5% off if you give us your email address. But I've also seen them where sometimes you're kind of getting hooked in. It's like on, I don't want to name names. Yeah, I will, because I think they're good. Harry's. Sometimes it's like, hey, if you give us your email, we'll send you a surprise. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, all right. So what do you think's a higher quality get of the email, when they've actually bought something or when you pull them in with a promo?
Well, I think both can be high quality because there are coupon addicts out there, by the way. So if
Oh,
you're
yeah.
so like a lot of times people will sign up for the discount and then delete. And so they'll just use it one time. So I guess to answer your question clearly, the promotion to get an email address probably ends up with a lower quality list. However, Bruce, if you opt them in, or if you get them to opt in with that first message and then are respectful of the messaging from there, like if you opted in and then you bought something, then we know that they like discounts. So maybe we create a journey or a messaging sequence that gives you more discounts and more surprise. And if we know that you live in a certain area of the country, we can message you in a certain way, or that you prefer this type of razor or that type of shaving cream. Thinking about individualized or one-to-one marketing, because those people who come in for the first time, they're seeking information. They've heard about the brand. They want to know more about why they should buy Harry's, versus people who have bought from you in the past. Like, those are people who are super valuable as well, but you can't ask them every day to buy from you again. And that's what a lot
Right.
of brands do. So think about the frequency of purchasing razors. Maybe it's once every 2 months or something. So maybe it's an appropriate messaging stream to send them X number of messages over 2 months. So it comes down to frequency and content, depending on where they came in the door.
So, based on everything you've just said here for the last minute, is this the kind of counsel that you're going to give your future clients? So, Tracy and I show up with our skincare brand. We actually have an email list.
Yeah.
We've been very ham-handed and don't really know what we're doing. Would you guys be able to talk about what you just said? These are your potential options.
Yes. Yeah. So yes, in the short term, and yes is a short answer. The longer answer is actually the software builds it all for you. So what's cool
Hmm.
about our software is that we've embedded those best practices, those consumer preferences, and then also all of the data modeling that we've done on the types of messages that certain types of people like at different parts of the marketing journey is all embedded in there. So yes, we'll onboard you and instruct you and those types of things, but also along the way, the AI or the software will reinforce those messages. So when you are just like, hey, it's the end of the month, we need to do a quick campaign to get our numbers up, you can pop into the software. It'll recommend the way to message it, and you can just say, yes, I want to do this, rather than having to build
Oh,
something from scratch.
So are
that's
your
cool.
programs, RJ, is the vision that your programs will be fairly turnkey, or will
Yes.
your clients need to have someone like specifically dedicated to work on the Backstroke campaign full time?
Turnkey. Yeah, turnkey. So
That's a
no,
good answer.
yeah, turnkey.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think, today a lot of brands, as I mentioned earlier, like a lot of brands are building out these marketing teams that have more and more people and then more and more expense and more bloat. And what we want to do is make them more efficient so their marketing person or whoever's responsible for marketing can get in there, press a button, and it is turnkey. And that's what kind of the cool advent of all this generative AI capability allows us to do in a brand new way.
Excellent. Tracy?
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about the creative aspect of the software. So can you include videos and images and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it supports all images, videos, GIFs, as well as on the creativity within the subject line, pre-header, and in the email. So anything that you'd want to send in an email, you can create. What I think is a lot of fun is that oftentimes creativity can go off the rails. And maybe a brand can say like, hey, let's do this wacky thing. And they want to experiment or be really creative. And then the platform will say, hey, that's predicted not to work. So you based on the thousands of brands in our machine, we can actually predict that that's not going to work. So then you can say, well, I still want to try it. And then when it fails, you'll be like, well, maybe I'll listen next time.
Hmm.
A lot of times brands have these wilder ideas. And so maybe the machine has never seen it. So then I could say, then Backstroke would say, well, we're not sure if it's going to work. But things that have been proven not to work, we can help you avoid those common mistakes. Whereas we'll identify things that if we don't know if it's going to work or the machine doesn't know, then it'll say, hey, run it as an experiment. We're not sure. But what we want to do is have brands avoid mistakes and issues and errors in their messaging programs that we've seen before.
So like, can we include memes? So if Bruce and I want to do a campaign, we want to do a meme.
Absolutely. I want to see what memes come out. I'd be worried maybe what Bruce comes up with, but Tracy, you seem like maybe more
Yeah.
appropriate. We'll
Yeah,
see.
absolutely.
So RJ, just following up on Tracy's point there, we've heard stories, and you know a lot more than at least I do about this for sure. But you hear stories about some of the AI stuff creating like kooky things. Is there some sort of like eyes on it before it goes live? How do you make sure that nothing we would all regret goes out? And it was no one intended it that way, but oh boy.
Yeah, yeah. The fancy word that I think is so scary is called hallucinations. So AI will attempt to predict what content might generate, and then it'll hallucinate or create something that is not true,
That's a
offensive.
great word for this.
Yeah, it could be offensive, inappropriate, racist, and
Yep.
actually, what a brand really cares about is it on brand or off brand? Does it reinforce what we want to, what like our brand is about or not? So what we've built is a human in the loop system where the machine will actually generate the content, but then the human can review that content and say, check mark, yes, I like this. No, I don't like this. And so we can constantly say the machine then has a feedback loop where
Right.
it
And it
what's
learns.
yeah, what's good or what's not good. So I have other recommendations in terms of like the adoption of AI and making sure you have like an AI council or a working group that can
Right.
address issues there. But yeah, the short answer is
But that's I think reassuring to people that, the machine doesn't create something and it runs wild before someone gets a chance, because
right.
a human's going to get fired,
Correct. Yeah,
not
yeah,
the
absolutely.
algorithm.
Yeah, you're right. You're totally right. Yeah, we
Yep.
don't want like a
So,
left field
so
situation.
RJ, as brands think about and companies think about the service Backstroke is going to provide, is this a media expense? Is it a sales expense? Because, having worked with and run brands and budgets for decades,
Yeah.
I never had a software budget. That was always the IT or finance group, and sometimes that's capitalized. So I think from the discussion, it sounds like it's a media budget, but I'd rather hear that from you than
Yeah,
me.
you're right. Most of our companies view it as a part of their media budget, yes. And what's kind of cool in that respect is that as you're looking at the return on investment from a media perspective on the email and the CRM, the customer relationship management side, once you have someone's email, it's hugely effective from an ROI perspective. So what we're seeing is marketers actually moving budget away from maybe more traditional ad spend and into these CRM or messaging programs because we can really prove an outstanding ROI. And keeping in mind that the full funnel is needed in any marketing campaign because you need to get new customers in, but then the return on investment is just huge.
Great. Thank you. I was hoping that was your answer, because if you said, I think it should be a software budget, I was going to be like, ooh,
Yeah,
No,
this
not at
just
all.
got a
exactly.
lot harder.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. So RJ, one hot topic for all our small emerging and challenger brands is raising money. So capital markets are harder than ever these days, especially for startups. So tell us a little bit about your philosophy in raising money and attracting investors. We'd love to hear that from you.
Yeah, well, I've been a part of a number of different startups, and in the technology world, it's a little different than maybe in the world of these challenger brands that are growing. So I just want to acknowledge the differences, but I think one, I always want to do business with somebody that I trust and that who knows me at my best and at my worst.
Hmm.
And um, I have had the experience of not having that level of trust and also not that relationship, and it doesn't really go well.
Right.
And at my age, and I'm 45 now, I've 20 years of experience-ish, a little bit more. I have relationships with people that I've known for decades at this point, which I think really makes a difference. Because a lot of times when you pop into these investor conversations, you say, "Hi, I'm RJ," and they say, "Hi, I'm Tracy," and then you give them a pitch deck and you say, "Now will you invest?" And a lot of times you're like so desperate just to get somebody to invest in your idea and love what you love that you're willing to take money for money's sake.
Right.
A lot of times those work out, sometimes they don't. I've been a part of both sides of it, and I feel really fortunate to have investors in our business that I trust, and again, who know me at my best, and literally they can name my weaknesses, which I've learned is just awesome because
Yeah.
then they know how to supplement those versus going into a board meeting being like, "Surprise, I'm bad at this," you know? So
Right.
these investors know how to shore up my weaknesses, and everybody has them. So to the extent possible, I think finding if people listening to this podcast are interested in raising money, call these investors right away and say like, I don't have a pitch deck yet, but I'm interested in starting a business. What would you want to look for? Can I take you to coffee? Can I start building that relationship with you so that maybe in a year or 2 years, when I'm ready to raise money, I'd like to come and pitch you on it. Investors want to have that conversation. That's the thing I have learned. They want to have that pre-conversation and want to meet you as well. It just feels weird because you're like, hey, I might raise money sometime in the future as a future entrepreneur. You want to talk? Investors say yes to those conversations. They want to have them. But it takes a lot of vulnerability, and it's a little scary. But to answer your question, I think it's like find people you trust and people who trust you, who know you
Hmm.
inside and out, positive and negative, and then work together as business partners. And that's different than what I thought in the past, which was, hey, I just need somebody to write a check.
Yeah.
Right.
So
That's good
what you're
advice. Great advice.
what you're saying, RJ, has been consistent with what Tracy and I have heard from, especially a guy like you, a multiple time entrepreneur, is there's a lot of risk to just taking a check.
Yeah.
Sometimes the people that'll do that very fast either aren't experienced writing checks or they're going to put the hammer to you right away.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
being able to kind of get to know people, we spoke with one serial entrepreneur a couple of episodes ago, and he said no deck for the first meeting and maybe even the first two.
Oh, I love
It's
that.
like, I want to get to know people. I want them to know me. I need to know if this person's a loon or if they think I'm a loon, because
Yeah.
otherwise, he kept saying bad marriage. You take the money, you're married,
Yeah.
and unwinding it can be hard.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. That's good advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, RJ, I think unless you have anything else, a point you'd like to make, we haven't asked. Boy, we sure appreciate you coming on, but how could people get in touch with you or learn more about your firm and the services you guys are bringing to market?
Yeah, we anybody can go and play around for free at backstroke.com. So if you're interested in creating subject lines that work for your marketing campaigns, pop into backstroke.com and play around for free. And if you like it enough, there is some contact us information there, and we'd love to tell you more.
Great. Okay, Tracy, the big finish.
The big finish. Thank you, RJ, so much. This has been really very fascinating and interesting. And I know that our audience is going to really enjoy listening to this episode. So we just encourage you to follow us. We're on Spotify. We're on iTunes. We would just love for you to subscribe to our channel. We also are on LinkedIn. We do post on LinkedIn every 2 weeks our episodes. So please follow us there as well. And again, thank you so much, RJ, for joining us today. And be safe out there.
Good luck out there, folks.